Silence at first, followed by cancellations, and now the walkout. According to several sources, Rachel Zegler's. Let's take a look at the publicist who formally resigned from the starlet in the midst of one of the most tumultuous PR spirals in recent memory. Tyler Kappa captured that image. "I have a professional headshot that is frequently used on Deadline, but I have no idea why it is the picture on IMDb. No farewell note, no polished change, just disappeared." Additionally, insiders claim that it wasn't just a discreet exit, but rather the last move of a plan that had already failed under duress. This isn't your average Hollywood reorganization. Publicists don't simply bail out in times of difficulty, especially when it comes to emerging stars who have several films in the works. However, insiders claim that Zegler's circumstances had gotten out of control. "I have no idea why they chose this one, but she is adorable, you know. I'll confirm my MTV page for you, so we can check if this is genuine." Singer and composer Debatable was raised in New Jersey by her American father and Colombian mother, which is a funny way to describe it, but it's true. Her reputation was deteriorating due to the Evita affair, which was still raging at the center, and her team's silence had only made it worse. According to one insider, there was no plan left, and no one wanted to be the public face of a collapse. That breakdown began long before the general public became aware of it. What was intended to be a smooth, silent reset with no remarks or drama, just letting the noise subside, became a vacuum that completely sucked up Zegler's momentum. Every opportunity to control the narrative or provide clarification is lost with each no-show. The murmurs increased in volume. Despite being one of 30,000 individuals who auditioned, she was chosen to play the part where that is also true. Individuals expected answers, but they received none, and there was panic behind the scenes. Known for West Side Story, I don't think I'm known for anything else. Studios had already started sending out invitations by the time the publicist allegedly left. Allies in the industry were becoming silent. Zegler, who was once seen as the face of Hollywood's rising generation, has turned into its cautionary story. And now that no one is left to spin it, she must face the storm. No lifeline and no spokeswoman, simply a faltering brand, a frozen smile, and industry inquiries about how terrible things are, including whether her PR bailed. The fall happened gradually, one uncomfortable silence at a time, rather than all at once. The majority of celebs would have done the obvious after the Evita scandal broke. Release a well-crafted statement, attend a soft-focus interview, and perhaps write a hopeful yet mysterious Instagram caption. However, Zegler's squad took the opposite action. No red carpets, no posts, no damage control, just a complete media blackout. Furthermore, it wasn't a mistake. That was the strategy. Then, for some reason, they chose to send me my star meter, which indicates that I'm getting close to a low point in my career. According to sources, the choice to go silent was made with a justification of low exposure recovery. The rationale ignored the commotion, allowing scandal weariness to set in and resurfacing after the storm had gone. However, this is the issue. The storm persisted. It spread. The internet filled in the holes with gossip, conjecture, and viral threads in the lack of certainty. She lost control of the story, and her silence changed from being enigmatic to damning. According to insiders, there was disagreement over the strategy. Tensions existed behind the scenes. Allegedly, one group was calling for prompt media attention and proactive interviews, while another thought that making a public announcement would only exacerbate the situation. The outcome was paralysis, which is where the fissures first appeared. Even casual spectators quickly became aware of the odd gaps. Where was Rachel when she RSVP'd to that industry gathering months ago? Why were her co-stars acting as though she didn't exist? And why hadn't she spoken on the projects to which she was still attached? Nobody was being calmed by the silence. Instead, it was raising alarms. It's fascinating that they chose to send me my star meter, but it didn't boost my confidence in any way. Whatever. Additionally, the longer the silence persisted, the less the PR campaign as a whole appeared to be a strategy and more like a vacuum. Her publicists were held accountable for a gap until they were removed, leaving Zegler's team to deal with the consequences of a plan that not only failed but also might have damaged the exact thing it was intended to defend. The pivotal event was so subtle that most people missed it, But insiders claim it was not some spectacular news conference or leaked phone call. An exclusive press conference for a streaming movie is called The Red Flag. Rachel was scheduled to participate in interviews and even had her talking points approved weeks in advance. But she wasn't there when the cameras rolled. There was no last-minute illness, no explanation, simply a conspicuous absence, and journalists were discreetly instructed to bypass her part. A PR source claims that this move wasn't an accident. They said it was a last-ditch effort to reduce exposure, but it actually prompted rumors that she was pulled, and not by the studio, so it came from her team. Was she being concealed or shielded? However, I also think it's crucial that I share with you the tiny pauses when I'm not feeling well, in addition to the really wonderful, exciting times. Insiders claim that everything broke at that very time. The studio was furious. The entire press session, which was supposed to showcase the complete ensemble, turned into a discussion about her absence as the actors fled in disarray. The tale turned into silence, and that silence, which had before been praised as a clever PR move, began to appear to be outright sabotage. The house of cards collapsed from that point on. One appearance sparked another. A silently gone panel at a Women in Film event, an indefinitely postponed digital Q&A session with fans. According to reports, Zegler's publicist was receiving frantic calls from representatives, managers, and even sponsors inquiring as to why she was abruptly leaving the profession. Several sources claim that this was the point at which Zegler's crew as a whole, not just her PR, started to lose trust in one another. No one wanted to take the blame, but everyone knew it wasn't working, according to one insider. At that point, the topic of the exit began to be discussed. The purpose of the junket was damage control. Rather, it validated what some industry insiders had long surmised. Zegler's public relations plan wasn't failing. It had already failed, and no one wanted to be beneath it when it fell. Behind the scenes, it was more of a war room than a public relations team. Several insiders claim that Zegler's PR was dealing with more than just negative press. They were fighting over her own control. The main disagreement visibility was that there were meetings where voices were raised, text chains that brought cold people from the same camp pushing completely different narratives, and in the midst of it all, Rachel became more and more unreachable, allegedly refusing to be packaged into a redemption arc she didn't believe in. It stated that the PR wished to change course swiftly. Rachel would have a tougher time regaining public favor the longer she remained mute. The remedy: a social media post with just the right amount of vulnerability and a well-timed interview, a carefully considered photo opportunity with a business partner, just being human, nothing fancy. But it didn't sit well with her managers. What would you say to people who are currently criticizing the movie excessively? You put a lot of effort into it. Okay, they believed that silence was power. According to one insider, they intended to act like Beyoncé, but overlooked the fact that Rachel is not Beyoncé. Additionally, there were reports of stricter limitations on who may represent her. Someone with knowledge of the matter claimed that at one time, even the publicist was essentially silencing their own voice after having to submit remarks through a series of internal approvals that frequently returned results slowly or not at all. When there is no consensus over the nature of the problem, you cannot carry out your crisis plan. In the meantime, the journalists and fans were growing impatient. Zegler's disappearance left a void that was soon teeming with rumors, and her squad lacked a united voice to put an end to it. Therefore, other team members were cutting her off before she could even send the message, while her PR was creating pitches and scheduling appearances. Internal turmoil in Hollywood quickly leaked, and studios saw the chaos. When public relations firms learned about the power battle, previously open doors began to close one by one. Because in this industry, nothing damages a company's brand more quickly than the perception that no one is in charge. Rachel's ship wasn't just drifting, it was breaking apart at the seams. When the PR finally left, it wasn't shocking. I felt a sense of relief. That's how one insider put it anyway. They were exhausted and genuinely ashamed, since this was more than simply a client not cooperating. Rather, it was a client turning into a liability and a tactic becoming a joke. The publicist didn't simply walk away. They moved far away. There was no tender farewell or loyalty post, just a silent breaking of links, as if they were cleaning their own name off the ruins. According to several insiders, The last straw was when a big studio that had been discreetly collaborating with Zegler's team on an impending press release flatly refused to proceed until her picture was restored. Not enhanced, restored. Typically used for celebrities with criminal histories rather than those involved in ugly Broadway feuds, that was the extent of the harm. And when the publicist relayed that information to the team, there was no change in strategy or direction, just more silence. The issue is, this wasn't some fresh graduate-level junior crap. This was an experienced public relations manager who has dealt with more well-known figures, more intense scandals, and more difficult recoveries. They were aware of what had to occur, but reportedly every recommendation was rejected or disregarded. I bet you didn't learn anything from this 9-minute clip on my phone. According to a source acquainted with the situation, it was similar to playing chess with players who were too preoccupied to argue over the color of the board. The writing was already on the wall by the time they arrived, and Rachel's social media accounts had frozen. Press was circling like sharks, invitations had stopped coming in, and the team was still doing nothing. Such paralysis is more than just a warning sign. It's considered professional suicide in the PR industry. As a result, the PR carefully exited in silence, leaving Zegler by himself. Her group insisted on saving her. It isn't a strategy anymore. It's the noise of everything collapsing. For the first time since the beginning of her profession, Rachel Zegler is not shielded in public. There was silence, and the entire burden of her controversy bearing down on her, with no publicist, no obvious team managing her fallout, and no amiable journalist giving her flowery questions in a puff-piece comeback. And now that her public relations plan has failed, she must deal with something much more scary than criticism. Deficiency. At this point, the majority of stars scramble. They share a thoughtfully edited selfie along with a healing-related statement. A source is leaked near the star quote on page 6. They correct the record with an unexpected podcast appearance. However, Rachel, nothing as of yet. She hasn't been seen in public for weeks, and her publicist's alleged departure has received no public reaction. And that's casting doubt on her control of the issue in general, as well as her image. To put it plainly, one executive from a major production firm, she doesn't seem like she's ready to fix this. Instead, she's acting like she's in over her head. Without a team vetting her message, every word she says will be dissected, examined, and twisted. Additionally, more people assume the worse the longer she waits. This is the negative aspect of silence. Without a staff to mediate or a spokesman to provide clarification, you not only lose control of the narrative, you take over it. The rise of memes fan theories gain traction. Instead of asking what will happen next, industry gatekeepers now want to know who will take her place. Because this is the harsh reality. Hollywood avoids playing waiting games. Studios will recast if Zegler is unable to step up, audiences will move on, and the PR safety